Did you know 40% of backyard growers in the United States toss their entire tomato crop every year because they misidentify a single bug? Yeah, I said it. You think that little speck on your leaf is just dirt, but it turns out to be a spider mite throwing a rager on your, on your plants, while you're inside binge watching Homestead tours. And by the time you figure it out, your garden looks like it went 12 rounds with a weed whacker. I used to be that person. I would squint at leaves like a detective in a bad cop show and still guess wrong. I sprayed neem oil on ladybug larvae because I thought they were the bad guys. I let hornworms eat half my peppers because I thought the poop pellets were just soil chunks. I was basically running a free buffet for pests and paying for it with my sanity and my salsa. Then I found out I could turn my beat-up phone into a plant doctor and hook up dirt-cheap sensors to Home Assistant and actually know what is happening in my soil, not guess, know. And that changed everything for my little micro homestead here in the States. So let us get into 7 things most folks totally butcher when it comes to using AI Pest ID and soil sensors on a small property. First tip, people think the AI apps are magic wands. They are not. You cannot just snap a blurry pic of a leaf from 3 feet away in the shade at dusk and expect the app to tell you it is aphids. The app is only as smart as the photo you feed it. If your picture looks like Bigfoot footage, then the AI is going to guess Bigfoot. Get close, get light, tap to focus. Take 3 angles if you have to. Top of the leaf, bottom of the leaf, and a close-up of the actual bug if you can catch the little dude. I learned this the hard way after my app told me I had powdery mildew when it was just bird poop. I almost ripped out a whole bed over bird poop. Do not be me. Second secret, most homesteaders trust the first answer the app gives and run with it. Huge mistake. These apps pull from databases that cover the whole planet. That weird beetle might be common in Florida, but if you are growing in Montana, it is probably something else that just looks similar. Always cross-check with your local extension office guides, or at least run the photo through 2 different apps. I use one app and then double-check with another before I do anything drastic. Think of it like getting a second opinion before you let someone operate on your zucchini. Because in America, we love a second opinion and we love our zucchini bread even more. The third thing people get wrong, they forget the AI does not know your context. The app will say you have flea beetles and recommend a heavy spray. But it does not know you released 1,000 ladybugs yesterday. It does not know your kids play in that bed. It does not know you are trying to stay organic for your farmer's market booth. The AI gives you data. You bring the wisdom. You decide if the damage is bad enough to act or if you can let the beneficial insects handle it. I once nuked a bed because the app said thrips. Turns out the thrips were already being eaten by minute pirate bugs I did not even see. I killed the good guys for no reason. Felt like a villain in a cartoon. Fourth tip. Everyone sleeps on video mode. They think AI Pest ID is only for still photos. Nope. Open your camera on video, hold it steady over the moving bug, and let the AI track it. Some apps can ID from movement patterns now. A leafhopper jumps different than an aphid walks. A spider mite is basically invisible, but the webbing moves weird in the wind. Video gives the app way more clues. Plus, you look like a total nerd doing it, and I am here for that energy. Your neighbors will think you are filming a documentary. Let them. You are protecting your food. Now let us switch to the dirt, because this is where most micro-homesteaders are flying blind. Fifth insight, people buy a soil moisture sensor, stick it in one spot, and think they understand their whole garden. Bro, that is like taking your temperature by holding the thermometer in the air and saying, if you have a fever. Soil is wild. The bed by your fence is different than the bed by your driveway. The top 2 inches are desert, while 6 inches down is a swamp. If you are running Home Assistant, you need at least 3 sensors per bed at different depths. Then you actually see the water moving. I found out I was overwatering like crazy because the top was dry, but the roots were drowning. My plants were basically sitting in a kiddie pool wearing a sweater. No wonder they were cranky. Sixth secret. Everyone chases the perfect numbers they saw on some YouTube video. Some guy in California says his soil should be 25% moisture, and suddenly every grower in Maine and Texas and Oregon is trying to hit 25%. That is not how this works. Your soil, your climate, your crops all change the target. Sandy soil in Arizona drains like a colander. Clay in Georgia holds water like a grudge. You have to watch your sensors for a full season and learn what your plants look like when the sensor says 30 or 40 or 50. Data is useless without context. Home Assistant can graph it all, but you have to be the one to say, yeah, my tomatoes are happiest when the 6-inch sensor reads 38. That is your number, not mine, not some dude from a different plant zone. Seventh tip that most people miss. They set up Home Assistant dashboards that look like NASA mission control and then never actually use them to make decisions. Data without action is just trivia. If your soil sensor says moisture dropped 20% overnight and the forecast says 95 degrees, then you know to water before work. If your pH sensor starts creeping up after you added compost, you know to back off on the wood ash. If your temperature sensor at root level shows 55 degrees in May, you know it is still too cold for peppers, even if the air feels nice. I used to just water on Sundays because that was my routine. Now I water when the dirt tells me to. My water bill dropped. My plants stopped being dramatic. My wife stopped asking why the basil looks like it gave up on life. Here is the analogy I tell everyone at the feed store. Running a micro homestead without AI Pest ID and soil data is like trying to coach a football team by listening from the parking lot. You hear some yelling, you hear a whistle, you guess what play they ran, sometimes you guess right. Most times you are wrong, and your team loses. Using your phone and Home Assistant is like putting on a headset and watching the drone footage. You see the linebacker blitzing. You see the cornerback slip. You call the right play. You still have to be a good coach, but at least you're not guessing anymore. And in America, we love a good football metaphor almost as much as we love proving our neighbor wrong about compost. Personal stake time. I am not some big farm guy. I have a quarter-acre behind a suburban house in the Midwest. I have a day job. I have 2 kids and a dog that thinks every garden bed is a personal bathroom. I do not have time to waste. Losing a crop means I am back at the grocery store buying sad lettuce that costs $5 and tastes like water. When I started using my phone to ID pests, I stopped spraying the wrong stuff. When I put $3 sensors into Home Assistant, I stopped drowning my carrots. Last year, I pulled 200 pounds of food out of a space smaller than most people's garage. I sold the extra at a roadside stand and made enough to cover my entire seed bill for next year. That is real money for a little guy. That is the difference between guessing and knowing. So here is the deal. The tech is not just for the big ag companies or the tech bros in Silicon Valley. It is for you, the person with 6 raised beds and a dream of selling jam at the farmer's market, the person in Texas fighting grasshoppers, the person in Vermont dealing with early blight, the person in California tracking every drop of water. Your phone is already in your pocket. Home Assistant runs on a little computer that costs less than a decent pair of boots. Sensors are cheaper than a bag of fertilizer. You do not need to be a coder. You just need to be curious enough to try. But not everyone agrees. Some folks say this is all overkill. They say Grandpa grew food for 80 years without a smartphone, and he did just fine. They say if you need an app to garden, then you are not a real homesteader. They say sensors take the soul out of it. They say we are getting too dependent on tech and forgetting how to just look at a plant and know. So I want to know, are we making homesteading better with AI and data, or are we losing something important when we stop trusting our gut and start trusting our phone? You tell me.